Oh, there we go. Okay, so I just like that picture. That's usually what I have you see when you walk in. They put up the other one with my picture on it. A little bit about me. We just covered all of this information. And I did want to say, too, I have a handout that has a lot of pertinent information on it. So don't feel like you have to take notes about like, oh, I want to write that down. That's how you work out. Don't worry about that. That's all captured in my handout. So we'll skip through that. What we're going to be talking about is indications and applications for exercise in patients with a variety of different muscle diseases. So we have kind of a big cross-section here today, and we're going to talk about what might or might not be appropriate depending on what disease you are currently living with. So the philosophy of physical therapy is generally use it or you lose it, right? That's kind of across the board. It doesn't really matter why you're walking into my clinic. If you can't use it, you're going to lose it. So our general philosophy is that the stronger the patient is, the better they're going to be able to work in whatever their life role is, because newsflash, gravity, right? So you have to work against gravity. If we all lived on the moon, strength would not be that big a deal. But we live in a world run by gravity, and so you're always working against that. So physical therapy as a field has actually evolved a great deal over the last 50 or 60 years, where we used to be kind of technicians that the doctor would say, go show them how to do X, Y, Z. And then we would trundle off and we would go do that, and we didn't necessarily know why. Now we've evolved into a field that is not only involved in research that's run by other professionals in the medical field like neurologists and neurogeneticists, we're also doing some of that research ourselves. We're trying to understand the structure of the disease so that we can understand how it impacts the structure of your body, and then we understand how your body is supposed to work. So if we can figure out how and why that disease is changing the way your body functions, we can help you to fight against that, to slow the progression and keep you comfortably independent as long as possible. So research is coming out all over the place, right? It's like exploding in the last decade. And it's a little bit of a challenge to keep up with all of it, which is one of the reasons why we're teamed with the MDA at Penn State, so that we can keep tabs on the newest research, figure out where we can get involved, figure out what's the cutting edge and what's going on, and how we're going to apply that to our treatment paradigms. One of the things is you guys are from all over the place, right? No, very few of you are probably terribly local. Like I live 8 miles from here. But when you go back, I want you to take information with you back to where you live so you can find somebody to partner with you in your neighborhood. I sound a little bit like Mr. Rogers, sorry. But you need to find a physical therapist that has an interest in treating somebody with your condition. These conditions are complicated, and we need to understand what is the underlying problem here that I'm trying to address. I cannot tell you how irritating it is to me to have some kid come into my MDA clinic who has Duchenne's and tell me his school physical therapist is making him exercise with a barbell or a TheraBand, and it makes me crazy for lots of reasons that you'll understand soon. But you need to find a physical therapist local to you that's going to be able to dig into your particular situation, understand the mechanics, and help you to figure out how to best to exercise. So we're going to do like a little word of caution for different levels of diseases, different kinds of diseases. In CMT, this is a group of peripheral neuropathies, so not affecting your brain, not affecting your spinal cord, but affecting your peripheral nerves as they're talking to your muscles. So it's that pathway between your brain and your muscle. These can create problems with muscle wasting, so the muscle is gradually replaced by either fat or, like we call it, fibrotic tissue. It's not a muscle. It can't move and make strength. And so we want you to exercise because we don't want you to become deconditioned, just in general, like everybody should exercise. We're all going to exercise in a minute. But we want you to be careful that you're not overdoing it on your less affected muscle. So CMT, you're going to first find those effects in your feet, the fronts and backs of your calves, maybe your hands and forearms are going to be first affected. If you're doing exercises where you're repeatedly gripping something, you're going to cause the unaffected muscle to overwork, and it's going to get sore. You might develop tendinitis. You can have all kinds of secondary problems because you're trying to make one muscle do the job of more than one muscle, okay? So we have to just be careful. You're going to hear this over and over again today. Listen to your body. So this is not as pretty a slide as Dr. Yum's. I just came from your talk, Dr. Yum. But we have this sausage-like appearance of the nerve. You see that nerve cell would be housed in your spinal cord. That nerve that looks kind of like a sausage goes all the way down to the muscle. So the ones going into your legs are the longest ones in your body. And it's talking to the muscle. So in CMT, your muscle is fine. Your muscle itself is relatively healthy. It's the nerve talking to it where you have the problem. We're going to talk a little bit about dystrophies. In your limb girdle and your muscular dystrophies, instead of having a pretty healthy muscle and a nerve that's having a problem, in these conditions you now have a muscle that's having a problem, okay? So now you have, excuse me, because of the genetic anomaly that doesn't allow you to make a good protein, the protein of your muscle is not very strong, so it's kind of fragile. And as your muscle is working, your muscle fibers slide over each other, and that creates friction, and that's a good thing in your muscle because that's how you're going to get stronger. But in these situations, that's going to tear your muscle up. Your muscle can't rebuild itself because you don't have the gene that tells your body to make the protein you need, right? You guys with me? Nod your heads or something, or you're all going to have to get up and exercise. Okay, good. So when you have that fragile muscle, you have to be a little more careful about how you're going to exercise. So we're going to talk about these different ways to exercise based on whether you have a fragile muscle or a nerve that's the problem, in which case exercise doesn't really affect your nerve, but we got to figure out what to do with that muscle that can't listen. So here's your muscular dystrophy idea. So you make proteins in these bundles. That's a cross-section. I don't think I have a pointer. This is a cross-section of a whole muscle. We have these little bundles, okay? And these little tiny bundles, this is an actual fiber. And this is what it looks like. There's tons of these inside these, tons of these inside these. You guys with me? So you have to make proteins to keep the cell structure on the outside of this really strong. That's where, in limb girdles and other muscular dystrophies, that's where your problem is. You don't have the ability to remake that protein. So as your muscle breaks down, you can't build it up. Okay. In different kinds of dystrophies, we have different regions of the body that are generally affected first, second, or third, or fourth. So you can see, like, here's your Duchenne's and your Becker's, and there's some differences there. Emily Dreyfus, I don't come across this too much. In your limb girdle, I would probably say I see Duchenne's, Becker's, limb girdle, and FSH the most in my clinic. And I primarily see children with neuromuscular disease. But you can see the impact of weakness in these different areas is going to be very different on how you get out of the bathtub, or how you get in and out of the car, or in and out of the chair. So remember that muscles always pull. A muscle cannot push, okay? So when I'm doing this, I'm working my bicep muscle, right? It's pulling my forearm up, and it's letting my forearm down. This muscle here, my tricep, is not pulling my elbow straight in this position. Gravity's pulling my arm back out, and my bicep has to relax and allow that to happen, okay? These are different kinds of muscle contractions. We're going to talk about that. Muscles function in a coordinated way. So if I've got a really strong bicep, but I have a really weak tricep, my arm's going to be up here, and it's going to be really hard to extend my arm, right? Because my tricep's real weak. Both sides of my joint have to be coordinated in strength and when they turn on and off, okay? So that's my brain through my nerves telling my muscles when to turn on and off while I'm doing something. This is how we operate our skeleton, right? Our skeleton is the inside, and the muscles are what's moving your skeleton around. So when you have weakness in a group of muscles, like from that picture that I just had up there, your skeleton is not going to be balanced in the same way. You're not going to have that coordination of both sides of all of the many joints in your body. So you can end up with contractures where, you know, something is kind of stuck, doesn't work so good. You can have altered postures. Oh, that felt good, a pat on my back. And you can have stiffness in lots of joints that cause pain when you're moving. So some of the typical contractures that we see from these disorders affect the feet. This is what a pretty typical foot looks like, okay? This is what we call a cavus foot. This is very common in CMT. And you'll also see this part will kind of rise up like a little tent here, more like this picture right here. And that can be very uncomfortable in a shoe, right? Because the shoes, the top, your knuckles are rubbing on the top and your toes are rubbing on the bottom. And then you've got this real high arch that's rubbing on the top of your shoe. And this is very common in CMT because as that nerve is not functioning and it's not staying healthy, the muscles inside the foot and also up in the calf are not working because the nerve is not talking to them. And so gradually as that muscle kind of atrophies, it just sort of draws in and it gets tight and stiff and it takes the bones with it because the muscle connects bone to bone. This kind of thing can also happen in CMT, either this direction or sometimes this direction, where the fingers get really stuck and it's very difficult to grip something if you don't have good flexibility in your palm. And then these are more typical up there with some of the limb girdle muscular dystrophies where the shoulder girdle is more affected. There's good strength down here, but these muscles are more affected and the shoulder blades can start to go a little squirrely. So let's talk about, okay, first of all, is everybody okay? You're with me, okay. We're gonna talk about the components of a PT program. So one of the things that we do is exercise for general health management, right? Everybody in the whole world needs to exercise. This is not specific to y'all with neuromuscular disease. I have to exercise, I have arthritis. I still have to exercise. I need to be able to conserve my energy, right? I have a finite amount of energy. You have a finite amount of energy. We have to be able to use that energy to have a fulfilling life. And your definition of a fulfilling life and your definition of a fulfilling life are different. So you know how you want to spend your energy. I need to tell you how to conserve it so that you can spend it on what you want. We're going to talk about bracing and equipment. It's a huge part of what I do, especially as my patients get older and the muscles get a little stiffer, the joints get a little stiffer. Maybe exercise is not going to be as fruitful anymore, but then we need to know how to apply bracing and how to apply equipment use to help you to continue to function. And we absolutely have to manage your pain. In many of these conditions, pain is not really part of the condition per se, but if I keep my arm like this long enough, my shoulder's gonna get stiff. The next time I try to go like this, it's gonna hurt. So it has nothing to do with the disease per se, it's a secondary problem that my joint got too stiff and it's painful to move a stiff joint around. You're stretching, soft tissue, whatever. So then we want to talk about, okay, fine, that's great. I'm tired, I don't feel great. Why should I get up and exercise? Well, I'll tell you. Because we want to manage our weight, and this is not specific to you guys, this is specific to everybody everywhere, because we have gravity. Remember we talked about gravity. We need to manage our weight because a little bit thinner body is actually going to be able to move better with less strength. So if I'm really, really overweight, it's just harder for me to move regardless of my muscle situation. But now add weakness on top of that, now it's even harder. Now I'm pushing a bigger boulder up the hill. We want to reduce the strain that we have on the muscles that are not healthy. So in many of these diseases, you have a lot of healthy muscle and you have some muscle that's not so healthy. The healthy muscle is taking over the job of those unhealthy muscles, those muscles that are more affected by your particular disease. And we don't want to compromise that any further. They're already doing the job of all the muscles, so we don't want to make it any harder for them. The stronger we are and the more healthy our body weight, the easier it is to do the tasks of normal daily living. Getting in and out of the shower, getting in and out of the car, getting in and out of the grocery store, putting your groceries away, just getting dressed. I mean, how many people are just tired by the time you finish getting dressed? And life's more fun if you have energy to go out and enjoy it, right? I don't want you to burn your energy getting in and out of the shower. Okay, that's not usually a very fulfilling activity for people. It just has to be done. I want you to have the energy to go out with your grandkids in the park and watch them throw a ball for the dog or whatever floats your boat. I want you to have the energy to go and do that. We also want to make sure that, especially in our older population, that we're really fighting this idea of isolation and depression. It's a very huge problem. I have worked in retirement communities. My husband works at a retirement community. And one of the biggest things, their two biggest things, fight depression and falling. That's their two top things on their list, is to make sure that their residents are not depressed. Well, how do you fight that? You spend your energy doing something that's fun, whatever that is, okay? And it's good for your heart health, right? We always want to make sure that we're keeping our heart as healthy as it can be. So, let's talk about strength for a second. Technically, any muscle that can contract can get stronger. The question is, how are we going to do that if we're also talking about a muscle that's not completely healthy? So we need to find ways to exercise the muscle where we're not making it break down. We're going to try to save it for as long as possible, or we're going to try to work around it. If you have a peripheral neuropathy, You got to work around the muscle that's no longer really listening to that damaged nerve. If you have a muscle disease, you got to figure out how to do what you want to do without tearing up your muscle any further. So we want to have a reasonable, and here's the big one, measurable goal. Okay, we used to send kids who had cerebral palsy would come to physical therapy 1 time a week, forever. Okay, forever. What were we achieving? Okay, I see him once a week. I do his stretches. I do his exercise. It's once a week. It's spitting in the wind, right? It doesn't do any good. We have realized that we need to have a measurable goal. So my little kiddo with CP, maybe his goal is to be able to walk across the playground. So now my goal is, how do I get this kid to be able to walk 150 yards, whatever it is, right? That's a measurable goal. So I know when he's working 50 feet, he's 2/3 of the way to his goal. 150, yeah, okay? I know, my friends are over there laughing at me. You need to stay motivated, right? He's not gonna do that 150 feet his first time, but if he can get 50 feet and last week I can say, you only did 40 last week, you did 50 this week, you did better. Okay, that doesn't count just for a 10-year-old, that counts for you too. Okay, you have to have a measurable goal that's reasonable for your situation and know that you're achieving it, because that's what gets you up every day. That's what makes you exercise. None of us exercise because we love it. I don't love it. I don't love it. I'm a physical therapist who doesn't love it. But I do it because I have to, because it's my goal to do X, Y, or Z, right? In this case, it's to reach the master level of black belt in martial arts, but we'll see. And don't forget this, baby, right here. Rest is as necessary as work. So yes, I want you to get up and exercise. I want you to have energy to do what's fun in your life and what adds to the quality of your life, but I also want you to enjoy your rest, okay? Yeah, and your body needs that. Whoops, I went the wrong direction. Okay, we're gonna talk about different options for exercise. Now, you don't have to take a picture. I see you doing it, it's okay. You can if you want, if you like it digital. This one I cut and pasted onto your handout, because I thought this was sort of a take-home slide. So we got lots of different ways we can exercise, right? Do you guys remember, like back in the day, Jane Fonda's exercise tapes, and it was all that jumping and kicking and up and down the steps? Okay, at least a couple of you are smiling. So we have low impact versus high impact, okay? I have arthritis, I don't do high impact. I train in martial arts, I don't do high impact. I'm not jumping up and down and all that stuff anymore. Too old for that stuff. Low impact is maybe instead of jumping, right, I'm just gonna raise up on my toes and come back down, so I never got off the floor. There's no real impact on my poor old joints, but I'm still getting the cardio of getting that body weight moving vertically, okay? We talk about different kinds of machines, right? When you go to the gym, those of you that go to a gym, or you might have something in your home already, the kinds of machines that are really the safest, regardless of your diagnosis, is those where your feet stay on the foot plates, okay? Especially if you have a peripheral neuropathy and you're more likely to have a sensory loss and you're not always quite exactly sure where your feet are going or where they might be. If you're walking on a treadmill, it's not hard to put your foot down a little cockeyed as your muscle fatigues, and then the next thing you know, that machine has thrown you on your face. I prefer the things where your feet stay on the foot plates. So those things like ellipticals, right? Bikes, and this weird thing, I don't know what they call it, but your legs just stay straight and they kind of go like this. I don't know if anybody's ever been on that. You look like a gazelle, right? You know what I'm talking about? I don't know what they're called. Does anybody? Arc trainer, thank you, and arc trainer. I have to update my slide. Because your feet are staying in contact with that foot plate and you're still moving, you'll get a heck of a workout, but you're not gonna run that risk of a muscle fatigue causing that misplaced foot and poof. If anybody's ever fallen, my son fell off the back of a treadmill. It was ugly. Yes, just like sandpaper up his poor little face. For those of you who are already struggling in our world of gravity, aquatics are wonderful. Now, it's hard to access depending on where you live. There are community pools in different situations. They may be attached to a retirement facility. They may be attached to a rehabilitation facility, but some places will let you actually buy a membership. Even if it's not like a community pool, you can buy a membership, meet with a therapist, they set you up on your program, and then you just go when the pool's open and you do your program, right? A lot of these things don't require me to watch you kick your feet 20 times in the pool. It just needs for me to tell you, go kick your feet 20 times in the pool and you go do it. So setting up the program and then finding a way to do it. Yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, all of these things, including my personal favorite, Pyo. combination of Pilates and yoga. Moves faster than yoga, but not as hard as Pilates. I love it. That can all be modified as necessary, right? For those of you that cannot put your hands flat on the floor, you put your hands on these little bricks instead, or on a little bench. So you're still getting the exercise, but you modify it. Here's what you need. You need that skilled therapist or a skilled trainer in a facility to help you set up what you're doing. If you're going to work with an athletic trainer or you're going to work with a fitness professional, they're out there, they're in all these gyms like Planet Fitness and all those places, they have these fitness professionals. If you're going to work with them, that's fine. Make sure they understand your situation. Make sure that they're willing to go Google limb-girdle muscular dystrophy if they have to and figure it out so that they understand I'm not going to be giving you a barbell and expecting you to go like this, right? If you have scapulofacial humeral dystrophy, I don't want you doing this. Sir?
Could you go to someone who actually knows what they're doing for your particular, get the plan, put in generic
Yes.
key terms, and then say, hi, do this for me?
Yes, you absolutely can. And there are some outpatient facilities that actually will have a relationship with a gym. And there's one place that's around, it's in Cumberland. I don't know that they do a lot of adult neurology kinds of things, but for their back patients, they have a gym membership. So after you're done your therapy, then you just transition to come in and you get sort of like distant supervision and you keep exercising. So yeah, absolutely. PT can set that program up for you, hand it to you. Now we have these links. You can do it digitally online. We'll send you a link to a customized program on MedBridge or something, and then you can share that with whoever you want. Make sure you include flexibility, okay? I'm talking to the men here specifically because the guys in my gym all want to lift weights and get big, but they can't touch their toes. Some of them can't touch their knees. So make sure that flexibility is included in this. We're going to talk a little bit more about how that looks for different people. Types of muscle exercises. So remember we said your muscle can pull your skeleton, but it cannot push your skeleton. So we've got 3 different ways that your muscle acts on your bone. Isometric exercises, concentric exercises, and eccentric exercises. I'm going to go a little faster because my alarm went off and I don't want to miss this stuff. So isometric, no movement. The muscle here is not going to change length. It's like that, right? So like I'm not going to pick this up and I'm just going to work against it. Exercising my bicep, but my muscle's not really moving. This is when we have an injured joint. We don't want that joint really moving a lot, but we want the muscle around the joint to get stronger. And we use this a lot for our postural exercises, okay? So like you sit on the little ball and you kind of hold yourself still. Those are isometric postural exercises. Concentric exercises, we're going to have a decrease in the joint angle. Now I've got a hold of a weight and I'm pulling it up with my bicep, okay? So the resistance of gravity is that way. My bicep is working against that resistance. When we have fragile muscle, this is the kind of contraction that we want to use the most. Now, gradually increasing resistance, there's a caveat there. Duchenne's and Becker's patients, your muscle is that fragile that we really don't want you working against progressively increasing resistance. We want you to do higher repetition and lower load. So not 5 pounds and then 10 pounds and then 15 pounds, but 10 times I go with the 5-pound weight, and in a week I might do 8 times with that same 5-pound weight. See the difference? Okay, this is how we're going to try to keep that fragile muscle functioning as long as possible. Low load, high rep pattern to protect those fragile muscles. Okay, then we have your eccentric. Now I've got that weight up here and I'm lowering the weight slowly with control. Still working my bicep, right? I'm lowering that load this direction. This is the one that is used in the later stages of recovery from different kinds of injuries, and it has the most stress on your muscle. I can actually lower gradually a load that's much heavier than what I can pick up, okay? I can pick up, let's say conservatively, about a 20-pound barbell, okay? I could just about get that all the way up. And I can lower, and that's fine. If you put me up here with a 50-pound barbell, I'm going to get it down with some control. I'm going to rip up my biceps, okay? Because I'm lowering it down. I'm working with gravity, which means I'm working against a much heavier load than what I could actually overcome. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so this is a lot more damaging to your muscle. Most of your active movements, getting up out of a chair and things, are combinations. So we start with kind of an eccentric contraction, then we move into concentric, and then we go back again. That's kind of typical ways of getting up and down and moving around. You're doing this all day long. So this is part of why we need to make sure we're consulting with a PT to set up these exercise programs so that you're focusing on the direction of movement that's most appropriate for your situation. In your peripheral neuropathies, this muscle contraction stuff is not as critical because your muscle's either going to work or it's not. You're going to have that weakness that's coming from the nerve not being able to talk to your muscle. Your situation is going to be a little different. You can do either kind of contraction as long as you can keep that muscle working. So we want to focus on one aspect of movement. So if you're bringing that bicep curl up, you're going to curl up nice and slow, really make your muscle work, but you're going to let it down pretty quickly so that you're decreasing the strain on the muscle going down. Be smart. You guys are all smart, right? You're all smart. Listen to your body. If your body's saying it's too much, it's probably too much. Then you need to back up, okay? Adverse signs include things like shortness of breath that you don't recover from, okay? Chest pain, don't exercise through chest pain. No. Even if it's just reflux, stop, because it might not be reflux this time. Excessive sweating, a little bit of sweat, okay, but it's pouring off of your body, that's probably a problem. If you get nauseous, stop immediately. Exercise should never, ever, ever make you nauseous. If your heart rate, if we like those heart rate monitors on the pieces of equipment that you hold on to and it monitors your heart rate, we like you to know where your target rate is for your age and your situation. If it spikes all of a sudden really high, stop. Get some water, get some rest, let somebody know what's going on. If you get muscle cramping during, immediately after, or the next day, if you get cramps or dark urine, that you've gone way too far and you need somebody to help you back it up. Because this means you're breaking down muscle and it's starting to come out in your urine. Okay, your proteins are starting to come out in your urine if they're really dark. So let's talk about breathing. We're all going to exercise. I promised my lunch companions we were going to exercise. I need everybody to sit up as best they can. Put your butt all the way to the back of your chair. And this is good because I can hardly breathe. Okay? Now, put your hands on your belly. Don't make your belly move. Just go like this. Move your shoulders up and down. Take a breath. Okay, now, I want you to take a big breath and I want you to make your hands move on your belly. Which one felt better? First one or second one? Second one? Okay, good. Diaphragmatic breathing, right? You got lung all the way from here, all the way to here. When your ribs are not really well secured and anchored because maybe you've got some spine issues, you don't have good spine strength, you don't have good abdominal strength, the anchors for your diaphragm, which is that big muscle down there that you're using, or your muscle's not anchored as well, and so it's less effective. So we start using these muscles up here with these little tiny lobes of your lung instead of these big wonkin' lobes that are down here, right? So your diaphragm doesn't work as efficiently, and then we overuse these muscles up here, trying to get air in. Well, you're never getting it down into the bottom of your lungs. So if you have a limb-girdle muscular dystrophy especially, but even some Duchenne's patients and some Becker's patients will have weakness across these accessory muscles. Now you're trying to use them to breathe too. So now you're really working really, really hard, and the mechanism is becoming less effective over time. So we can have problems with respiratory illnesses. We're getting more tired because our muscle is not getting the oxygen it needs. And we can get pain, neck, shoulders, upper back, because if you're all the time using these muscles, you're straining things up there. Okay, so I include breathing exercises in just about every home program that I send out, okay, for anybody with a neuromuscular disease. Kids like to blow bubbles in their milk. Just give them a big tall glass so it doesn't bubble over. You can blow bubbles in your milk if you want. Or you can blow a feather across a table with a straw. Because do this with me. Blow out as long as you possibly can. Now breathe in. Did everybody take a nice big breath in? Because you almost emptied your lungs. The more I breathe out, the more I breathe in afterwards. I see people are coughing, you're getting that cleared out, that's good. That means you need to do this more often. Practice your deep breathing. Practice good posture. Remember I said put your butt all the way in the back and sit up as straight as you can? Because good posture is important for the function of your ribs, your diaphragm, and your spine. And stretch. We're going to talk about how we can stretch. You can stretch your rib cage laying down. We call that hook lying if you're a physical therapist. And you drop your knees from one side and then to the other side. And if your knees won't go all the way to the side, put little pillows there. And your knees could land on the pillow and go across the other side, land on the pillow. You don't have the strength to do it. Your caregiver can do it for you. Husband, wife, child, son, paid caregiver, whoever, whatever. Service dog. I would really like to see that. We have to work on that. It would be, wouldn't it? But I think he could learn. If you can do this sitting up, that's great. Those are stretching your intercostal muscles, a lot of the muscles along the sides of your body that we kind of forget about. If you can lay on your belly, this is fantastic. I have lots of my kids, see, I mostly treat kids. Lots and lots of my kids, we keep maintaining their ability to lay on their bellies. Drains your lungs a different direction than you're normally draining them, which is important. And it gets all this nice spine extension here, which stretches the attachments for your diaphragm. Lets you get a nice picture. I got one more, hold on. There you go, now you can take the picture. Now, just deep breathing, just what we did. Hands on your belly. The longer you blow out, the bigger your reflexive inhale will be. Oh, sorry, there was one more. This is inhale on a count of 1, 2, 3 through the nose. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but slow, through your mouth, right? This is what I do for my asthma. Helps me inflate those lungs, get that lung tissue expanded. Okay, a note about good posture. Who's sitting properly, the right or the left? Right. Thank you. A little audience participation. And you may have to make adjustments in your seating system. You may have to make sure that you've got the flexibility to get here. You need hip flexibility and lumbar spine flexibility to be able to do that. So that's why flexibility is important in your exercise. All comes together. Let's talk, oh dear, oh my goodness. All right, I'm gonna go lickety-split. Energy conservation. This is also in your handout. Redesign what you're doing. If you're blowing all through your energy by trying to take a bath and get dressed in the morning, maybe you could bathe at night. Maybe bathe every other day. It's not the end of the world. Doing things to minimize your trips up and down the stairs. If you're not already living on a single floor, get to first floor living. I love this one. A patient in ALS clinic told me this. She said, I throw my laundry down the steps. Instead of having to carry it all the way down, she could just toss it, and then she could walk down. Yes, ma'am?
My dad, one of the doctors said that you should do that anyway because most people fall down the steps.
Yes, instead of falling up, yeah. And and you're exactly right. Most people are going to fall when they're at the top and they're trying to, because this is an eccentric contraction of that quadricep, lowering your body. It's really hard, and if your quads are a little weak, you really don't want to be doing steps. Use equipment to compensate for your weakness. I don't care how you get the job done, just get the job done. You can make adjustments in the height relationship between plates and things in your elbow. You know, if you can't keep doing this because your bicep's giving out, well, jack up your plate, jack up your elbow. Now you're going this direction. Gravity's now eliminated from my bicep. I'm not fighting gravity with that spoon. I'm just shoveling it straight across. And I do mean shovel. So I love this little handle, right? Can you guys see this picture? There's this little handle that sticks in the gizmo of the door so that you have the door itself and a handle on the other side to help you get in and out. Now, the kings and queens of gizmos are your occupational therapists. They are like your best friend ever. If you go on Google or Amazon or whatever and you put in a assistive device to help don socks, you're going to get 12 things. How do you know which one is the best? That's when you want to go to an OT. So we have so many assistive devices, and you can buy them yourself on the internet. But you have to figure out what are you buying? What's it for? Because you're going to waste a lot of money before you find the right thing. If you come to somebody who knows how to evaluate you, they're going to be able to say, well, you could do this or this or this. Which one do you like better? Or this is what I like to use in this situation, but you could pick from this or this. They're going to help you with that decision-making process. MDA site, Quest magazine, all those places. There's tons of this stuff all over the place. I mean, this is just like a small sample. All kinds of different chairs. What's the difference between this one and this one? About 15 pounds. So do you really need big wheels if you're not going to propel yourself? Probably not. then do this and let somebody push you around or go with a power chair. Depends on what your situation is. Whoops. Oh, here we go. These are the gadgets. I love gadgets. That's a knife for people that can only use one hand. It's actually attached to the cutting board. Good old-fashioned reachers. And then this homemade device, it's duct tape and a rubber band and a regular fork because they don't have grip anymore. There's all kinds of this stuff out there. And this all falls within that domain of occupational therapy. They can come up with the most amazing things. Let's talk about your feet. Feet stink. It's okay. I'm used to it. So, no, she didn't come to this one. My friend with CMT needed to see that slide. So, sometimes when you have that foot that's doing this in CMT, if I push here, I can actually lift up the arch of your foot and get a little bit more toe extension. And that's what that pad does. And that can help those toes to stop getting stiff like this. We'll just keep them straightened out. A zillion different kinds of braces. This is energy conserving. It's carbon fiber. It only works right if you can make heel strike. If you have a flat foot gait, it's not going to conserve your energy one bit. That's a more standard kind of brace. Has a joint, gives you a little flexibility if you have the flexibility. We talk about hand splints. That's a resting hand splint. Your hand is virtually useless sitting in there, but it keeps it stretched out. This is a more functional brace that positions the wrist so that the fingers can then work. And then we have a series of garments that are available, depending on how good your therapist can write a letter to get them paid for. Garments and braces, kind of two different things. The garments can be extremely effective, but they're very often not covered by your insurance because it's considered a garment, not a medical device. And so there's a whole hoo-ha about trying to get them authorized. This is still not a fantastic position for this hand, but it's way better than that. And in a person who maybe can't tolerate something that's real stiff, this is still going to be a more functional hand position for her. The dynamic movement orthoses, these are garments very similar to, think of it as like jacked up Under Armour. Under Armour was designed initially for athletes to have a better sense of where their body is in space, to improve their body control, their balance, and their responsivity on the playing field. That's literally where Under Armour came from. This is Under Armour jacked up. You can get it in all different designs. It basically is just going to squeeze the body part that it's around. It helps you with positioning, understanding. It gives you more feedback about where you are. It does give some limited support. It can actually help a lot with muscle fatigue. I had a kid who was exceptionally tall, like just a long, tall drink of water, and so weak that when he stood up, his back extension was such that his back was at 90 degrees and his belly was facing the ceiling. And then his head was here. And he was literally walking like this. And by 11 o'clock in the morning at his typical school, he had back pain that was 10 out of 10. Now, I'm like, use a chair. Won't use a chair, won't use a chair. Teenage boy, stubborn as the day is long. No, 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 no. Okay, fine. Let's try. We did something like this. In fact, it may have been more like this. So it gave him a space. So then when he would stand, instead of being literally belly to the ceiling, he was here. He would have 3 or 4 out of 10 pain by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Right? Now he can go to school. He can do what his friends are doing. It was the biggest difference in the world. Let's talk very briefly about pain management. We talked about pain is not normally part of most of your neuromuscular diseases. However, when you get soft tissue tightness, you get shoulder contractures or foot contractures, and the loss of flexibility, plus the fact that you tend to sit more, these are the things that are going to cause pain. Okay? Your body is meant to be moving. Your joints are meant to be moving all the way through their range of motion periodically to lubricate the cartilage and keep the fluid moving. That's what's wrong with my knee. There's no cartilage on one side, so it moves funny. When you can't get all the way through your range of motion, then the joint's not getting lubricated, and that's what really is hurting. So we can manage this by trying to restore your flexibility in your movement. We can do massage. Do not underrate a good therapeutic massage. It can be amazing, because they are literally able to stretch tissue with their hands. Now, the caveat is sometimes your tissue is fragile, so make sure they understand what your disease is. Okay? CMT, go to town, knock yourself out, deep Swedish massage, I'm fine. Muscular dystrophies, I'm going to be a little more sketchy. I don't want them really pushing or pulling really hard on your muscle. But still a very valid treatment. Doing your stretching, you can use ice, heat, and other modalities to control pain, same as somebody who walks in with a stiff shoulder from a rotator cuff surgery. Make sure your equipment works. Make sure it fits you. You know, you change over time. Just because you're not growing like kids are growing, you're still changing over time. You may need to be reevaluated instead of, oh, I've always had this kind of chair, so I'm always going to get this kind of chair. Maybe something new on the market is going to fit you better. And then make sure your bracing is appropriate and that it fits you properly. And again, just because you've had the same brace forever doesn't mean it's still the right brace for you. Wanted to talk about OT. Toileting, cooking, bathing, dressing, all your activities of daily living. That is what OT does, okay? And they are fantastic at it. They can talk to you all day long about what you're doing and how you might be able to do it in a way that's different, that conserves your energy. They do, sometimes they'll come out, they'll talk to you about home modification, especially in the bathroom. They're also well-versed in talking to you about your recreation as adults. What do you do for fun? How can I make that something you can do more of or do it more easily? And also redesigning things like workstations, okay, ergonomics of work. PT and OT, we like to work together. We complement each other. In summary, exercise is good for everybody. It's the prescription of exercise that's different person by person. The goal is that you should enjoy your life, okay? That is my goal. I want you to be free from pain and have the energy to do what makes your life meaningful for you. And we can help you sort through all of the options. We can help you design your exercise programs. We can help you connect to people in your community to find the opportunities to do what you want to do and recommend equipment and the right orthotics for you. You just have to come to us and say, I need help with X, Y, or Z. To access physical therapy, this is also on the handout. In Pennsylvania, you still need a prescription from your doctor, okay? You can walk in most places and get an evaluation, but to get treatment, you need a prescription. I always want you to have a prescription because I want to know that a doctor who knows your condition is recommending therapy. And they can put that diagnosis code on there. That gives your therapist something to go look up and make sure that they're competent in what they're doing. Have that therapist evaluate you. They will develop a plan. They should talk to you about what your goals are and then what their goals are and make sure those goals are all on the same page. Typically nowadays, like I said, we don't see the little kid with CP once a week for his whole life because he has CP. We see him 2 or 3 times a week for 12 weeks to make him strong enough to get 150 yards across the playground. Same thing for you guys. You come in, you say, I'm really struggling with putting my groceries away, and my cabinets are all up here. Then we're going to talk about modification, we're going to talk about stretching, we're going to talk about exercise to get you strong enough to do it. Do your own research. Look for a physical therapist that knows neuromuscular disease. You can call a clinic and say, I have blah, 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 and I need to know if you have a therapist that can treat blah, blah, blah. And they're going to tell you yes or no. You can interview a therapist. You can interview the manager of a clinic. You have that right. I interviewed my pediatrician before I started using her as a pediatrician. Here's some nice sites. They're all on the handout. American Physical Therapy Association, obviously the MDA, and PPMD, Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy. Very active in supporting research and just a great place to make a connection if you have a kid in this situation. Questions and anything that I missed? And how am I doing? Am I doing okay on time for questions?
We have a few minutes.
Okay. Any questions? Or something that I missed that you specifically want to talk about? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say this is the best presentation I've ever seen on exercise and MD.
Oh.
Well,
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Wow, I'm obviously shocked. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Anything I didn't get a chance to talk about? Yes, ma'am.
When you come here or you get a referral to come down here to get results, like, would you teach me or refer me to somebody up in State College that could do what I do?
Yes.
Teach what I do?
Yes. So for adult at Penn State Hershey, we have 2 sides to our MDA clinic. We have the pediatric MDA and we have the adult MDA. The pediatric MDA currently is multidisciplinary with a variety of supports. The adult functions just slightly differently. You see the physician primarily on your visit. They have OT and PT kind of on call. So if there is an urgent problem for that moment, the clinics are literally next door to each other. So they just say, okay, run over there and see that therapist, or they'll call the therapist, they'll run over and see you. If it's something that is more substantial in need and you're local to us, Dr. Bandy or whichever physician you see would write you a prescription for an evaluation with some specifics on it. You could either bring it to us, or if we're not convenient for you, you could take it to a clinic near you. I will say that most of the time, a lot of the outpatient places you see, if they have like sports in the name or something, they might not have a therapist that works there with a background in neuromuscular disease. This is like a specialty of a specialty of a specialty in PT. So most of the time, clinics that are associated with teaching hospitals, research facilities, sort of like your bigger guns, are going to be places where their outpatient department should have neuro-based therapists. But don't discount like the Dreyer or the whatever that's right around the corner from you. Give them a call, because you don't know that they might not have a great therapist there who happens to be working in neuromuscular disease, and it's just not advertised on their logo, because this is not where we make our money, okay? We make our money in sports rehab, where we're getting this many patients in and out, bam, 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 and we're rolling over the patients really fast. But in many cases, clinics will have that other side. They'll have pediatrics. Peds doesn't make money either. And they'll have neuromuscular disease or adult neuro people working and treating there as well. And it's just not on their logo. So don't discount that local clinic. Talk to, if you want to do aquatics, and you talk to your primary care physician. Talk to people in your neighborhood, talk to people at your church, see if there's a retirement community near you that has a pool, or an outpatient or an inpatient rehab facility that has a pool that might give you some kind of access. My biggest problem is access to a pool. That's my biggest problem when we want to do aquatics. Very difficult to find in the community, but they're out there. In fact, one of the Holiday Inns has a pool and they were, I don't know if they still even are open, but they used to allow families of children with disabilities to come in for free with their therapist and do their therapy in the pool for nothing, which was amazing. Now, I don't know if they're still doing that. I don't do that kind of work anymore, but anything else? Yes, sir.
The words plateau and patient refused are like the bane of existence.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
Basically, so I know this is insider and you're going to shoot your own gang, but how do you get around I would either use the word lazy or overworked therapist who's got 25 patients on their list, they have time for 15, and they essentially count on, oh, you don't feel like exercising, you rest today.
Right.
Now, that's occasionally probably appropriate, most of the time it's not.
Right.
There's also this concept
Nope, you're fine.
of plateaued, and I guess some people just have infarcted right brains that don't figure out, okay, if we need to satisfy some requirement of a letter of a law, how do we creative write things up so that it's not plateauing, that there's some incremental goal we're still achieving, so the plateau and then the patient refuse. My attitude is, if you refuse, well, Medicaid's paying you to get him to want to do it. So
Right.
shut up and get back in that room. So what are some of your suggestions?
So there's a couple of different issues here, and I will try to stay off my political hobby horse because it would just not be a good idea. So one of the reasons we shifted to doing these episodes of care is because I am not going to cure your neuromuscular disease. I'm not treating, when you look at my documentation, I don't look like I'm treating your neuromuscular disease. You've got a bunch of diagnoses up here. One of them is going to be altered gait, weak shoulders. Oh, by the way, limb girdle muscular dystrophy. I need to know it, but what I'm treating is the weakness I see, the dysfunction that I see. So when I've gotten past that piece, that episode of care is done. So let's get back to the lady who can't reach the cupboards, right? I come to you as a therapist because I can't put my hand goods away. So I'm going to say, okay, can we lower your cupboards? Can we get your shoulder more flexible? Can we get your shoulder strong? So we work twice a week for, say, 12 weeks. We got the shoulder flexible, but couldn't get it strong enough to get that can good up there. Can't move the cabinets because I rent, okay? So now what? Now I'm going to give you something adapted. I'm going to give you the reacher. I'm going to do something. So now I've still solved your problem. Bye. Now, 3 months later, she comes back. I fell. Now I'm falling. I'm tripping. Okay. Look at your ankles. Okay, now we're going to do 12 weeks of let's stretch those ankles. Let's strengthen that anterior tib. Let's work on your gait pattern. Let's challenge your balance. We get to the end. Did that work? No, man, I'm still falling. Okay, now maybe we need to talk about a brace. Now I'm going to see you. We're going to get the brace. I'm going to train you in the brace. Now you're walking in the brace. You're not falling. Okay, bye. So you see what I'm saying? So there's a place where the plan is not being written properly. If the plan is, you have limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, so I'm going to see you for 12 weeks once a week, now 12 weeks once a week, now 12 weeks once a week, now 12 weeks once a week, that's a bad plan. That's a bad plan of care. Because I'm not going to fix your neuromuscular disease. I need to fix your impairment. I need to try to figure out how to get you to do what you need to do in the way that's safe for everybody and pain-free. That's my goal. So do you see what I'm saying? Now, I hear what you're saying. There are therapists who are not on the same page that I am on. I understand that. And I see their plans of care come into my clinic. And I go outside and I count to 10 and I go back in. And I say, okay, let's talk about what my plan of care would look like for your child. Let me go write it down and send it to your therapist. All right. Now, that therapist has the right to treat that patient the way they see fit, as long as they're in their domain, under their licensure, yada, yada, yada. At some point, the patient can say, you know, you're not doing what my therapist in the clinic is saying you should really be doing for me, so goodbye. And you go find somebody else. So there's sort of a in-between here place. The ones that drive me crazy are the people who are treating you because you're filling up a patient slot, and I'm going to see you and re-up your care and re-up your care and re-up your care. And then they're going to say you plateau all of a sudden when your insurance coverage runs out.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
How do you go about setting it up so that you don't run into
You don't get into that.
plateau? Do you set
Yeah.
a moving target of goals? Because you want to
You can't.
continue the therapy,
Right.
but you might realize that it's much more incremental to show.
You have to have reasonable goals. So you and your therapist have to sit down together and be able to come up with a reasonable and functional goal. It has to be something that I can measure, right? Like my 150 yards kid across the playground did 40, did 50, did 70. Today he did 60, now he did 80, now he did 50, now he did 90. I need to be able to measure that. And I need to know that he's also doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is usually the mom making him do his exercises. There is a place where we have to meet in the middle, but you need to make sure that when you're working with your therapist and you come in with the I'm tripping, falling, and you do your 12 weeks and you're still tripping and falling, we're not going to keep throwing the same darts at the same target. We need to do something different.
But